Hey there, today I'm going to make a tier list of all of the Marvel Crisis Protocol characters that we have released thus far. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. Alright, so before I get into the actual tier listing, I wanted to go over a couple of restrictions I'm placing on myself for this, so that it's hopefully a little bit more of a balanced look at each individual character and what they can bring to the table. The first is I'm not keeping in mind leadership abilities, except for the characters that are bringing that leadership ability into the game. So it'll be kept in mind that Red Skull is bringing the Master of Evil ability, Captain America is bringing the Day Unlike Any Other, but I'm not going to look at Vision and be like, well, if he is in the Avengers or Hulk, and if he is in the Cabal with Cosmic Invigoration, I'm just going to be looking at the characters themselves. With that in mind, I'm also going to put the same restriction onto Team Tactic cards, with the slight, again, exception of characters that specifically have their name on it. So I will keep in mind Cosmic Invigoration with Red Skull because it's an important piece of his character, or Gamma Launch with Hulk, Usurp the Throne with Killmonger, cards like that that specifically list a character that kind of help define who that character is, though them needing an extra tactic card to fully flesh out that character will also be held against them. As well, I'm not gonna lie, this is probably my third or fourth time trying to record this section because it is very important to try to capture the essence and idea behind all of these characters correctly, but also at the same time not making this a 30 to 40 minute tier review of all the characters that we have out so far, and I can only fathom doing a tier review later down the line when more and more characters come out. With that in mind, I do want to say that every single character in this game has been extremely well balanced. While there are some characters that I don't use as often or don't play as often, so far everything has been very well balanced, and the only reason characters are going to be ranking lower is because they're not going to be as versatile or as useful in multiple situations. With that in mind, I want to go ahead and get started and put somebody into the top and then the bottom. And for the top slot, I'm going to go ahead and throw out Thor. Thor is a massive damage dealer, able to hand out status conditions, as well because he has a built-in throw with the super ability, but as well as a good chance for getting one on his wild on the strike, and it's a size 4 throw. He's also able to move people off of objectives pretty easily. He has flying. He is 5 threat, so he's very expensive, but he's able to put in a lot of work for that 5 threat. On the other side of the spectrum, I might do something a little bit controversial, and I'm going to throw Groot down here at the very bottom. Groot is extremely good when he is played with Rocket. He's able to provide the special bodyguard for Rocket. Being able to activate the Deadly Duo tactic card is extremely viable around Rocket, but Groot on his own is a little bit of a slower character. He's about the same speed as Venom, but he doesn't have that extra range to give him a little bit more threat. He does have the ability to heal himself, but Venom also has that, and Venom kind of just feels a little bit more versatile, and for 3 threat, I don't think Groot is really able to stand up there as an extremely versatile character in what he's able to do, because I mostly see him as a support character, but his support is extremely limited to just Rocket or the We Are Groot tactic card that is very situational. You have to have it in these kind of clumped up areas, and from here though, I'm kind of excited to just dive into this. With that in mind, I want to go ahead and throw out a couple of characters that are very similar and are going to get a similar ranking because of it. And the first ones I'm going to throw up are Captain America and Red Skull. Both of these guys are fantastic support characters, either in being able to mitigate damage in some way or another. For Red Skull, that's throwing it away from himself and onto somebody else, but that usually means that somebody else is getting a lot of power. For Captain America, it's making sure that that damage goes onto him to protect some of your other important pieces. Both of these are fantastic support characters, and they also bring a really strong affiliation bonuses to their teams. That's one of the reasons that they make this list so high, because they are able to do so much for these larger teams, a little bit more versatile, and I really enjoy them as those support pieces. They're not going to be your primary damage dealers, they're not going to be your primary control pieces, but they do also both have a throw built in, so there's a good bit of versatility with them and providing some really strong abilities on the board. With that in mind, and not because of his leadership ability in any way, I think he actually has one of my least favorite, but because he is the best objective runner in the game, I'm throwing Black Panther into Tier 1 as well. And by objective runner, I'm talking about a character who is able to go and get an objective, hang on to it, whether that's because they're able to move away quickly, which he is able to do, but also because he is then able to take a hit very well. He has the vibranium armor on his healthy side that's letting him count blocks, blanks as blocks, and then on his injured side he just gets to roll extra dice if you pay that extra bit of power. An extremely useful ability, helps him be a little bit more durable while carrying something like the Wakandan Herb or the Kree Power Core, and he has some good attacks to boot. Pounce is a really strong ability. Seeing something similar to that on Gamora is going to be really nice. And with that in mind, because he's the best at what he does, I'm leaving him up there at Tier 1. A solid runner-up to Black Panther that I'm throwing out here in 1.5 because he used to be a Tier 0 character for me, but as affiliations got fleshed out a little bit more, he became less of a piece that needed to be in every single list that I built, and that's Baron Zemo. Baron Zemo is still able to do a lot of work. He does the hit and run, he's able to provide support with rerolls, he's an extremely versatile character that makes him extremely valuable on the board, but he's just not quite to Black Panther's survivability. He is unfortunately a little bit squishier with 3 defenses across the board. He doesn't get that extra reroll, but it's still not quite enough to bump him up to Tier 1 for me. Trying to flesh out all these other spots, I'm going to go ahead and throw Iron Man here down in rank 3. Iron Man has been a character that has always kind of confused me. He has a really nice defensive ability in the Invincible Iron Man, being able to reduce damage down to a minimum of 1. But then he also has all of these ranged attacks that require some power to really get off his stronger ones or to boost up his weaker ones with Friday AI. His character abilities just don't really synergize within themselves. So he's not a character, even when I was running Avengers in the early days, that I was really strong on running, unfortunately. I like the character of Iron Man, just not this representation of him on the table. And then to show what a good Tier 2 character is for me, I'm going to throw Hela in there. Hela is actually one of my favorite characters right now, but unfortunately she doesn't have a lot of versatility. She provides a strong mystic attack, which is something that you absolutely need to deal with characters like Captain America, Black Panther, but she's not able to provide too much more. She's extremely durable with her souls, and she is a question that if your opponents aren't able to answer, she'll just stay on the board the entire time. However, she's not able to provide pretty much anything else in the game. She's great at doing her one thing, but she's not going to be great at moving characters off of objectives. She's not supporting any of her allies. So I like Hela, but she's not going to be that perfect Tier 0, Tier 1, and not even really Tier 1.5 for me. Alright, so from here we kind of have a solid baseline of what I'm looking for in characters and where they are falling. So from here I'm going to throw Okoye into Tier 2 as well. Just having that lower threat cost is extremely nice. She's not a great objective runner, she's a little bit of a support, she's a little bit of a damage dealer, but all in all I've not been running her outside of Wakanda, where I think there are better 2 threat cost characters. And with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and throw Black Widow into 1.5. She's a fantastic objective runner, even on the secure objectives in the back. She's not going to be that perfect 2 threat character anymore, because there are some other options out there. But most of the time, if you were looking for an annoying character that your opponent will have to deal with as she is holding an important objective, or if she's just on the back scoring you that extra point every turn while they're having to have like a 4 threat character hold theirs, she is extremely viable. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw the last 2-threat character out there, and that is going to be Rocket. Rocket is able to do a similar job into what Black Widow does, holding down a back objective extremely effectively for a 2-threat character, but he's able to punch out a lot of damage unlike Black Widow. He doesn't have any of the same defensive abilities as her, so once somebody actually gets in his face, Rocket's having a really, really bad day. But the other thing Rocket can do is not be an objective person, but rather just go hide behind a dumpster or a car or something size 2, where they can't see him, but because of how the line of sight works in this game, Rocket is able to see them and just put out so much damage. Range 5 energy dice, extremely strong. And let's go ahead and throw out Venom. Venom I really like. Venom is a strong character, and I'm actually going to bump him up to 1.5 because he is a really good objective player as well. He has a throw and he has the web snare, being able to yank people off of objectives. He has a pretty good bit of staying power himself because of his We Are Venom getting healing back. He's able to disrupt your opponent's plans with so many snacks and lethal protector. Unfortunately, he doesn't have an affiliation bonus right now, or at least he's not able to contribute to an affiliation right now until we see Green Goblin come out, hopefully. So right now I'm keeping him at 1.5 because he is still able to do damage and be a good objective player for 4 threat. And with that in mind, I'm unfortunately putting Spider-Man a little bit below him. They play a very similar role. Spider-Man's a little bit more of an annoying character to deal with. He's able to get those rerolls on both defense and dodge rolls, which is really nice. Unfortunately, him only having those 3 defense in most situations is not enough for those rerolls to really be able to suit him and help him out of those situations. So unfortunately for me, Spider-Man is ranked 2. He is still a great objective player, but he's not able to really put out damage like Venom, and he doesn't have the same staying power as Venom, which is why I'm ranking him a little bit lower. Also down here, I'm going to go ahead and throw Crossbones down at the bottom. Crossbones is a good piece. Crossbones is a direct counter to characters like Cherie, who are good objective players wanting to push characters away. And once he gets into combat, he's going to be able to throw out a good bit of damage. However, I'm never going to run him outside of the Cabal. And I'm not going to ever run him not next to Red Skull, where Red Skull can kind of feed him some attacks. Crossbones is a very specific instance character that can shine really well in those specific instances, but otherwise Crossbones does not do it for me. His low Mystic and energy defense makes him extremely vulnerable, even though he is able to reduce some of that incoming damage, but at the end of the day, he's just not quite strong enough for me to consider him any higher than tier 4. With that in mind, I'm also going to go ahead and throw out Dr. Octavius into Tier 3. Similar to Spider-Man, similar to Venom, he just does not have an affiliation that he is able to contribute to, which I think unfortunately does hamper him in not just how he does on the field. I think once he's on the battlefield, he does fine, but all 3 of these characters are less likely to make it into your roster in the first place because they aren't able to contribute to an affiliation that you want to build towards. And I think Venom is the only one of these characters that really is able to say, hey, even though he's not going to contribute, I want Venom. Usually there's really good 3-slot characters in this game for an affiliation. So if I'm wanting to run the Avengers, I'm more likely to run somebody like Winter Soldier than I am Dr. Octopus. Within the Cabal, I'd much rather run Baron Zemo. Within the Asgardians, I'd much rather run Valkyrie, and so on and so on. So because he does not fill in a good 3-slot role, there's better 3-slotters within an affiliation. Doc Ock and all of these kind of guys get something held against them a little bit. Talking about 3-pointers, I'm going to go ahead and throw out who I think the epitome of a 3-pointer is, and that is Cherie. Cherie has a little bit of everything. She is squishy, don't get me wrong. If she wasn't squishy, she would be broken, downright absolutely. But being able to get a guaranteed push on her range 5 Panther Pew Pew Gauntlets attack is really strong. Being able to do that against any size character is really strong. Being able to help allies within range 4 reroll dice because she doesn't have very many things to spend power on herself is really strong. I think you guys get it at this point. She's able to be both an objective player and a support character, and if it comes down to it, she has a really strong, big attack with her Sonic Crush that is able to be, 1, energy, one of the most common, weakest defense types in the game. 2, it's able to hand out stun and stagger. It's a lot of dice coming out of her, and she's able to pump out a good bit of damage. So she has these 3 separate things that really set her above anywhere else, and again, when you look at then somebody like Doc Ock and Iron Man, she's able to be a lot more versatile on the battlefield. Doc Ock is great at targeting down one character and just dealing a ton of damage with his flurry of arms on the wilds for his strike, and then also having a throw. Doc Ock is a good character, but he's not going to be put into as many lists because he's not going to be built into an affiliation. And speaking of affiliations and just kind of sliding in everywhere, let's talk about Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is great because of his rogue agent ability, being able to help out with fleshing out a certain roster. For me, I run him with my Avengers because I like him more than I like Iron Man with the range 5. He just does pretty good work for what he is. However, none of his abilities really stand out, and once again, there's not a lot of versatility in what he does. He and Cap are able to buddy up, but you're running a tactic card, you have to keep these 2 models together on the board. There's a lot of restrictions that go into it, but just as somebody who's able to pelt out range 5 physical dice and basically has a built-in Seeing Red tactic card into his Got Your Back ability, makes him still better than rank 3. From here, I'm also going to go ahead and throw out Modok. Modok is one that I have debated back and forth where he belongs, because at the beginning of his time, Modok was tier 0. There was no question about it. He was a force that had to be dealt with. There were not many other characters able to do what he did, and for that, I almost wanted to keep him up here, but I think he belongs currently in tier 1. I think Thor, with his 4 physical defense dice, and 4 energy, just are able to make him a little bit more durable than Modok, because he's not going to be... Thor's not as weak to throws. Modok does have the ability to shrug off a lot of the status conditions that can be handed out, stop being pushed around so much, because he cancels out wilds on his healthy side. But once he gets on his injured side, he is a frail egg that just gets cracked like Humpty Dumpty style. He's able to put out a lot of good damage either way, but I do think that Modok needs to stay on the tier 1 side of things, which is still really good. He still is able to do a lot of work, and it's great that these expensive characters can be viable, because there's so many characters with the Guardians of the Galaxy with these lower threat costs that might want to get out there and just start pumping out damage. These are characters that are a little bit more elite, and because they have so many ways to deal damage to multiple characters in a round, kind of AoE damage-esque, makes them do a lot of good work. Let's see, I've got Ultron, and I'm going to put Ultron beside Hela right here, because they are extremely similar. Both of them have a variety of damage output potential, both of them have ways of just staying on the board repeatedly and annoyingly. However, there's not too much more to them. They're good damage dealers, they're both 4 threat, and I think that this is where these 2 characters should sit. And speaking of characters that are similar, I'm going to go ahead and throw both Captain Marvel and Vision out here. Both of these characters are extremely similar, and both of them, they're almost identical. Both of them have good ways to buff their physical and energy defenses. Marvel also has a good way to buff her mystic defense, but Vision already just starts with a good one there. Both of them have really strong energy attacks that are able to do work, but just in different ways. Both of them have a throw that throws medium of a size 3 character terrain. So similar, both of them fly. Vision is immune to bleed, they're both immune to poison. It's kind of ridiculous how similar they are. In my opinion, Vision plays better in the Avengers, Marvel plays a little bit better in the Cabal, but that's not why I'm separating them here. I think that more times than not, the AoE damage that Vision is able to provide is just a little bit more important than being able to target down a single character like Captain Marvel is able to very efficiently do with her Energy Blast. The re-rolling of those dice is completely underrated in my opinion, especially when you start throwing some hammers on her. She's just able to get some ridiculous amount of work done. But I think right now, in where We're seeing character lists that are more focused on having multiple characters out on the board. Vision is usually able to do a little bit more work hitting multiple characters with his beam attack. With that, I'm going to go ahead and throw out Mr. Hulk. And Hulk may be, again, a little bit controversial, because Hulk is in my roster. I love Hulk. Hulk can do work. Hulk has to have a lot of support built around him for him to be able to do that work. Hulk needs to have usually either a bodyguard or a Red Skull to feed him some of that damage. He needs to have tactic cards to make sure he is able to be healed, or something to support him, basically. And it is because of that that Hulk ranks pretty low for me. Hulk on his own is a pretty fragile character. Two characters, a little bit heavier hitters like a Captain Marvel or a Venom, are able to just deal out the damage on Hulk, and Hulk maybe gets one good activation out of it, but at the end of the day, that's it. I've even had a Koye do 12 damage in a single activation onto Hulk, which is more than half of his health. A 2-threat character being able to do that to a 6-threat character is scary. Now, again, Hulk is able to do some really strong things, but because of his kind of glaring weaknesses and his lack of versatility, and with its big cost, I don't think he deserves to be much higher. Now, again, this is without me saying, hey, if you bring field dressing, hey, if you bring patch up, there's these cards that can support Hulk and make him extremely valuable and make him a lot more threatening, but I'm trying to keep those out of mind while building this list. So with the 4 that I have left, I will quickly throw Valkyrie into that 1.5. I think she is on par with Baron Zemo. Zemo's a little bit more of a support piece. Both of them charge, both of them deal with physical attacks, both of them have dice consistency on themselves. She's a little bit better at dealing damage, especially with the multiple attack procs, and being able to change blanks and blocks to hits for every crit and wild she rolls in an attack, as long as she uses the Warrior of Legend ability. Zemo's able to provide rerolls to some buddies. I think they're, again, very similar characters within different affiliations, giving them bonuses there, but I think that's where she sits. Star-Lord, I haven't played enough games with him, to be honest, to really fairly rank him. I do not think his leadership ability is as good as Captain America or Red Skull's. I think it is a little bit better than Black Panther's, because you don't have to pay power, but you do have to pay a tactic card, which is becoming more and more valuable in this game. So just looking at him for the attacks that he's able to put out and the damage that he possibly can do for 3 threat, that's also very squishy. I wish there was almost a well, there is this 1.5. I wish there was like almost a 1.75, but I think I'm going to put him down here in rank 1.5 ultimately. The energy attacks are extremely valuable. They continue to be, as more and more characters we see have kind of this weakness to energy. Groot recently added, who is a tanky character that needs energy to answer. As well, he's the only character that's able to throw out so many status conditions. It is slightly absurd what he is able to do. Then Loki, I'm going to throw into this 2 slot. Loki is a fantastic control piece. He is able to do a lot of work, and he is almost an anti-support character, where he has this bubble of denial where your opponent's characters just do not want to be, because they do not have a fun time around Loki. However, for 4 threat, he is vulnerable. He is just as squishy as your average human like Star-Lord or Zemo or Cherie, and it's a little bit harder to consider that versus these 3-threat characters that have those stats when he's a 4-threat character, possibly even a 5-threat character if he has the Mind Gem on him. Now, he does have some built-in defenses with Trickster and stuff, but he still is just a little bit too vulnerable for me. And the last character I'm going to throw out here is going to go into rank 2 as well, and while he might be the best assassin-type character who is focused on single character damage in the game, however, he is a one-trick pony in that regard. He doesn't do anything with objectives. There are 0 push abilities. He is all about... The only way he's getting somebody off an objective is to daze them or to KO him. He's great at it, but the lack of versatility just doesn't really put him much higher. He does have the Usurp the Throne, being able to score those extra... He does have Usurp the Throne. Being able to score those extra points is extremely important, but there also has to be a series of things lined up perfectly for Killmonger for that to be able to work out. I used to run him with these new releases. I unfortunately think Killmonger just got replaced by Rocket, with Rocket's more general usefulness. But there's a strong possibility of me bringing Killmonger back because he is one of those characters that your opponent just has to answer. And I wish I could rank him a little bit higher, but when you look a little bit higher, what these characters are able to provide for either less threat than he is costing, or what they're able to do on the objective side of things is just a little bit more valuable, squeezing Killmonger into this rank. So this is where I ultimately ended up placing everybody. I think I'm pretty happy with it. There's a good number of objective players who have ranked pretty high because they are able to do good work up there. We have some generic damage dealers ranked a little bit lower because, again, they're good at their specific jobs. Everybody has a place to shine in this game, but unfortunately there's just less versatility, which means characters are less likely to make it into the roster in the first place. I hope you guys have enjoyed this rundown on all the different characters. It went a little bit longer than I think I wanted it to, but it's a lot of fun. I would love to see your guys' list. If you guys want, go to tiermaker.com. I'm going to drop a link down in the description below where you can go ahead and find this exact setup. Or if you just go to the Tier Maker website and type in MCP, look for the link for the Turn Zero MCP tier list. The podcast guys, Todd and Sugi and all of them, have put this up for us to go through and make our own tier list. They did a wonderful job with it, and very thankful for all the very cool artwork that they put up for these guys. Go give them a listen if you haven't. And as well, I am now a regular for House Party Protocol with Will. We are doing basically the show has now gone weekly, where every other week is what you're already used to. Will going through some of the bigger news announcements, a little bit of strategy talk, talking over new characters. And then on these off weeks, what Will and I are going through and doing is taking a look at characters that are a little bit older, because we have so many releases. We're kind of doing a retrospective, and we just yesterday got to start out with Captain America and Red Skull, and looking back at these leaders and how they have changed, have they gotten worse, have they gotten better with all these new releases. That's all I have for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep on gaming.